Hello guys, and welcome to another video. And today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to factor quadratic equations. This is going to be a simple algebra video about me just teaching you guys how to factor and how quadratic functions work. Okay guys, so alright, so let's get right into it. So let's say we have an equation. So we have a quadratic equation here. We have x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, so alright, so this is a quadratic equation. It has to be factorable. Okay, so of course, to factor, you need to have a factorable quadratic equation. So what do we even mean by factoring, though? Okay, so factoring just means that we're trying to solve for x. It's just another way of solving for x. You know how you have a linear function, you solve for x, it's very simple. You subtract on both sides and then you divide by, 2 or 3, whatever the coefficient might be, right? So, you know, factoring is just another way of solving for x. So, when we're solving for x, graphically, this means that we have a quadratic function. All right, so let's graph this real quick. We have a quadratic function here. This is how a quadratic function may look like. And here on the x-axis, that's going to be that. Those are going to be our x-intercepts. Okay, so that's going to be our zeros. It's going to be our x-intercepts or zeros. Okay, so we are solving for those values. There's always going to be two zeros for quadratic functions. um so yeah, for for polynomial functions, they may look like like this. Hold up, sorry for my awful graph. Polynomial functions may look something like that, where you have multiple zeros. You have like 3 zeros in this case. But we are not, doing polynomial functions yet, so we're not going to, we're not going to be worrying about that. Okay, so let's go back real quick. Let me just erase all this. Okay, so just really just keep that in mind. Keep that graph in mind because we are trying to solve for that. We need to understand what we've been solving for. Okay, so we have, all right, so we have x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to divide this into a, b, and c. All right, so it's a b, and c method of factoring. Many people, this is the most common way of factoring. Okay, and this is the method that works. We have a, so we have a. Okay, so remember, a quadratic equation is just ax squared, which is what we have here, minus bx minus c. Okay, so a is the coefficient of x squared, b is just the coefficient of x, and c is just the constant or the y-intercept that we have. So it's 15 in this case. B is -2 and a is 1. All right, so a is going to be 1, b is going to be -2, and c is going to be -15. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply a times c. That's going to give us, of course, that's 1 times -15, and that's going to give us -15, right? So now with -15, okay, so now what we have to do is we have to find values, or we have to find numbers that multiply and equal -15, but that also add up and give us -2x. Okay, so what value? So of course the only values that actually multiply to -15 is, of course, we have 1 times -15, but that's not gonna, 1 plus 15 is not, is 16 is not 2, right? So so then we have 3 times -5, that that gives us -15. So 3 times -5, look, if you look, you do 3 minus 5, that's actually -2. So we just found our values right there. All right, so we have x squared, right? We have plus 3x minus 5x minus 15. Okay, so we're going to now factor by grouping. See, you see how plus 3x minus 5x, that equals -2x. Okay, so now we just have to keep it in this form. Okay, so now we're going to factor by grouping. We do x, we do here, then we do x, we factor x because, really just think about it. We have x squared plus 3x. Of course, what can you factor out of this? Well, they both contain one x, right? So we're going to factor out an x. So we have an x here. And of course, we have x squared divided by an x is x, so we have x here. And 3x divided by an x gives us 3, okay? So then we have here, we have negative 5, x minus 15. So what do we do here? Well, we know that you can just, divide a negative 5 out of both of them because they're both divisible by negative 5, right? So we have negative 5 here and negative 5 here, and we're going to have negative 5 here. And then what's negative 5x divided by negative 5? Well, that's going to be x. And what's negative 15 divided by negative 5? That's going to be a positive 3. So you see how these two are the same? You see how these two are the same? Well, they have to be the same when you're factoring because remember, we're looking for two solutions, okay? So what are the two solutions? We have x minus 5 and x plus 3, okay? So these are the two solutions we have. Now we haven't yet, really, whatchamacallit, like, you know, we haven't found the zeros yet because, we have to still, evaluate these equations, right? So we have x minus 5 equals 0, okay? So we have plus 5, and you get x equals 5, right? So then you have x plus 3 equals 0. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry. All right, so we have x plus 3 equals 0. Then we do minus 3 here, minus 3 here. And then we get x equals negative 3, right? Let's just take a look at a difference of perfect squares. So what even is a difference of perfect squares? So a difference of perfect squares is basically when you have something like this. So we have x squared minus 9, for example. Okay, so we have x squared minus 9. So you would say, oh, what even is this? Is this even a quadratic? Well, this is a quadratic actually. This is still in the in a parabola form, but it's a little different. It's actually way easier to factor out these kinds of difference of perfect squares than it is to factor trinomial, because of course we know that this is in a binomial form. The ax squared minus bx minus c, all that is in a trinomial form, so it's it's a little bit harder to factor, right? But these are actually very simple to factor. So what does the difference of perfect squares contain? Okay, so here we have it's x squared, right? So of course everyone has to have an x squared. It could also be x. Actually, keep in mind that it could actually be x to the fourth too. Okay, so it could actually be x to the fourth, but usually they are not going to give you that in class. Okay, so don't worry about that one. Okay, so x squared minus 9. So this is a difference of perfect squares, and the reason the reason it is because we have an x squared and then we have a minus sign. Remember, difference is minus, right? It's a subtraction sign. So we have a minus, right? And then 9. Let's take a look at 9. What is square root of 9? Okay. So what is the square root of 9? It's 3, right? It's 3. 3 squared is 9, right? So that's when you have a difference of perfect squares. When you can actually, and of course, what is the square root of x squared? It's actually x. Of course, it's negative or positive, but it's x. For the sake of this video, right? It's it's x. So x squared is actually x times x, right? So sorry guys. All right. So all right, so we have a difference of perfect square here. So we have x squared minus 9, all right? So we have x times x, that gives you x squared, and then we have a difference, right? By the way, this cannot work if you have an x squared plus 9, for example. It can only work if you have a subtraction sign, okay? That's why it's called difference. So we have 9 That's 3 times negative 3, because 3 times negative 3, that equals, negative 9. And then we have, and then now we just put it into the, into the thing, right? So this x corresponds with this 3, and this x corresponds with this 3, right? So we have x plus 3, and then x minus 3. Of course, this would be x equals negative 3, and x equals 3. Okay, so this right here would be the solution for this difference of perfect squares. Okay, guys, let's take a look at another example here. So let's say we have another difference of perfect squares. We have 9x squared minus 64. Okay, so this is another difference of perfect squares that we have. And how do we know it's, a difference of perfect squares? Well, we have to check. We have to see, we have 3x here, because, 9x squared, right? So what is the what is the square root of 9x squared? All right, let's of 9x squared, it's actually 3x, okay? Because 3x times 3x gives you 9x squared, okay? So, and then of course we have the subtraction sign. We have 64. What's the square root of 64? Is 8. So 8 times 8, of course, well, in this case is negative because it's negative 64. So 8 times negative 8 is negative 64, right? So it's simple. We just do 3x minus 8. And then we have 3x plus 8, right? So now we just solve for this. 3x equals 8 divided by 3 divided by 3. X equals 8 over 3. Okay, so that's the first answer. And then we have 3x plus 8. Of course, we said it equal to 0. Minus 8 minus 8. 3x equals negative 8. And we get an answer of negative 8 over 3. Okay, so that's going to be our zeros for this equation. Okay, guys, thank you for watching, guys. Thank you. I really hope you guys learned something today. I really hope you guys can implement this into your math class. And yeah, please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.